today is a gift class that I will address to those who want to dive in the process of knowing their shadow self, their shadow tendencies. Sometimes we waste time to look for answers and reasons why things might not be flowing in our lives, and we do it externally. And most of the true important answers of life come from inside. This is something that I have been myself exploring through my entire experience as a yogi, through meditation, through reflection, through Raja Yoga, meaning self-inquiry. And I've come to the realization many years ago that we cannot truly succeed and move forward in life if we only have a strong willpower and focus. At some point I thought, well, this is what is required. Willpower, focus, just do the stuff and you will arrive to where you want to arrive. Well, there are elements that are so relevant and they go beyond the scope of our awareness, that have a tremendous influence in the life of everyone. And that is the place in the mind, the place in our subconscious, or even deeper than that, in the unconscious, where we collect experiences, events from the past, sometimes traumas, and they remain hidden for us to be able to be functional. And so something happens in life and we encounter a difficulty, and then some part of us gets broken, some part of us gets injured emotionally, psychologically, or physically. And then what happens with these situations is that we gotta move forward in life, but there's something that remains behind. There's a hidden aspect of our psyche, there's a part within ourselves that remains with the memory, remains with the trauma, remains with the event and the emotions that were affecting you in that moment of your life. And what normally takes place in the life of all of us is that we forget about those things. We forget, we just keep living life as if it is just normal, as if nothing had happened. And some of us do it consciously in a sort of denial, like not really going into the healing process or not really integrating the experience of the past in a conscious way. And we purposely drink or get somehow drugs or something to escape that experience. But simply what happens to other people is that they just forget, they just move forward. And when you are avoiding to relate to something that is important in your life, something that is deep and personal in your life, is that if you don't address it, then it will naturally fall into another section of your mind. That's the one I just mentioned, is the subconscious and is the unconscious. When it falls there, then it remains there and it becomes a shadow. That's the origin of all our shadows. It is something that has affected us in one way or another, and we have not paid attention, we have not dealt with it, or we have actually escaped or run away from the implications and the effects of that thing in our lives. And so it is pushed down into going deeper into the unconscious and becomes a shadow, becomes something that it is in that area of our life where we cannot see it, we cannot relate it. This is most of the time a self-defense mechanism. When we live life in our human experience, we have a lot of issues throughout our entire existence, issues that are painful. And so one of the self-mechanisms that the mind and ego have is that they create a distance and they deny and they separate somehow the past from the present, as if there wasn't a link inside of us. And this is the problem of the shadow. There's always a link to these memories or these parts of ourselves that have not been processed, that have not been dealt with. And these parts, one way or another, remain alive And in some cases, they keep growing, they keep expanding. If life contains several experiences that somehow resemble the original experience that produced this shadow, then what will happen is that this shadow will grow through time, and it will become more relevant and more impactful in our lives. We are not aware. That's why we call them shadows, because they are in the hidden self, they are in the subconscious. And no matter how much we have a strong willpower and focus to achieve things in life, these elements from the unconscious have actually more power than your own willpower. When you decide that there's a time for making changes in your life, and you're very determined and you're very clear that that's what you want in life, and you set yourself into a sort of process, path, or direction, and you have complete convincement that that's the way for you, what will happen is that you will encounter that from inside there are going to be voices. Yes, voices of your own psyche, voices of your own subconscious, energies, emotions that will come to the surface, and they will test you in that determination to make changes in your life. Why it is so? Because for you to make changes in your life, you need to resolve internal structural things of your own mind, of your own heart. That is going to come to your life. Your issues from the past, your shortcomings, the trends of your psyche or your emotions will come back to the present in order for you to properly address them, so you can create the change that you are expecting to create. If you keep ignoring, it could articulate with other traumas or complexes a sort of energy that starts to store inside. And then when life comes and tests you, these forces might actually be triggered to actually express the pain, the original pain, the fear, or the anxiety that they once produced you and you didn't deal with. Understanding the importance of shadow work is to be able to have a full grip on your own life. The idea is that through that internal, more in-depth self-exploration, you will understand the actual elements that are internal that create sabotage experiences in your own life. The internal elements that actually produce self-sabotage. Because these elements, these tendencies, these emotions, these traumas, these shadows, if we put them all in that same box, are elements, are aspects that have to be integrated. They are aspects of life that must be brought to light. This is what determines the success in life. This is what determines how well you will do in your new job, or in your new relationship, or your new chapter of life. If elements that are hidden to your own self and they are not addressed, they will come and knock your door in your own psyche, in your own heart. They will make you feel like there is something internal that must be taken care of. Shadow work, in essence, it's a psychological idea that comes in the 20th century, and it is very much connected to the Jungian and Freudian exploration into the subconscious and the unconscious. Shadow work, it's a deeper diving into those areas that we cannot see of our own psyche. And it's called shadow because it is below the level of the light of consciousness. Light of consciousness means that you can see who you are, what you think, what you feel. The light of consciousness allows you to have self-awareness. You understand your place, at least to some degree. You understand what you have to do in life, at least to some degree. That's the awareness serving you. But the shadow aspect is the one you don't know. Is that internal pulsations, more than one actually, that might have a very chaotic expression within yourself. we do shadow work to understand also that our mind is not just one unity, compacted unity. The mind is actually a fragmented reality. There are so many aspects of our mind. And sometimes those aspects you can notice in your day-to-day experience. They have a certain opposition with each other. Should I actually eat this, or should I avoid it? Is it okay to go there? Is it okay to do this? There's so many voices inside of us. There's so many aspects of our own mind. What yogis discovered is that this fragmentation, these many pieces of our mind, tend to have different intentions and different agendas. And so what yogis discover through the practice of meditation specifically is that what meditation produces is an integration of the fragmentation. It creates bridges within myself with the elements of the unconscious that are hidden. We experience this by doing yoga as a process of coming home and collecting our past, collecting our experiences, understanding where we come from. So the psychologist had this analytical way to approach it through psychotherapists and other types of methodologies. But the yogis had the powerful technique of meditation. Yogis have developed this ability to stimulate the mind so it becomes neutral. And so you can see the shadow without freaking out, because obviously the shadows that we contain within are not easy things to deal with. Some shadows are really loaded with negative emotions, negative thoughts, and negative even agendas that go against ourselves. You can think of your own experience. Some of your inner voices might be very self-destructive, or at least self-critical, that you are doing something and you listen within yourself a thought that says you are not good enough, or you are not prepared, or you don't know this, or who do you think you are? You know, these voices are coming from that deeper well of your unconscious. And then maybe these voices are coming from that early time of life. Most of the shadows actually come from early childhood, when we were afraid of disappointing our parents, when we were not allowed to be ourselves. And so we started a process, what in psychology is called repression or suppression, both ways. And then some things were just not accepted by ourselves when we were little children. And these things that we did not accept didn't disappear just from our experience. No, they stayed there, but they stayed in a hidden place. When we had the experience of them again, we repressed them again, we suppressed them again, because whatever these feelings we had did not have space in the family, did not have a space in the relationship with our parents or caretakers. And as it did not have that space, we repressed them, we hid them to ourselves, and we disconnected, we created distance with these elements that are inside. And these tendencies start to have their own power, so to speak. These voices have their own energy, so to speak, because that's the mind. The mind has its very creative nature. The mind can divide itself so many times. Yogis make a difference because they learn to come into a space of stillness. And in that space of stillness, the deeper content of the mind can come to the surface without the movement that the mind normally has. And that stillness that you achieve with meditation makes it more clear to see what's underneath the surface of awareness. That is shadow work, where you can realize the different forces, tendencies, fears, voices, fragmentations, concepts, beliefs that are not supporting you, that are not actually aligned with who you are. If we don't address this aspect, this aspect will be in us anyways. It's not that it doesn't exist. A lot of people in our planet suffer because of this tremendously. They have a certain idea about life and they go in a certain direction, but then when life comes to test, these voices inside do not support you anymore. It's like you are doing something, and as you are doing it, there's something in your brain saying, oh, you look so stupid. Look at the way you are dressing. Look at the way you talk. Look at your nose. Look at your voice. Listen to yourself. Voices and thoughts and feelings, all of them that you are handling while you are trying to survive, while you are trying to deliver, or complete a task. Why is it like that? Because the mind is deep. The mind is tremendously powerful and is tremendously malleable. It can change. It can split itself in many parts. Look, in history, when you see the different teachers that have come to our planet and have guided us through the process of self-exploration, all of them have had to encounter their shadows. Jesus went to the desert. He was there for 40 days, and he encountered three shadows, actually. 3 shadows that are archetypical, and they are very universal. Yeah, and so Jesus' encounter had to meet them. The same with Buddha. Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, and he sat there for 3 days or 40 days, I don't remember exactly now. And he was there meditating, and he saw all these evils. In that tradition, they were called evils. Well, actually, in the Christian tradition, these shadows were also called Satan. Yeah, but this is more to do with a interpretation, religious interpretation that is based on the consciousness of the time, because of the advancement of psychology. That these are not necessarily entities or evils that have a certain being that in themselves exist by their own nature. Rather, they are aspects of the mind. They are aspects of the subconscious. Although they can take over, they can possess you, right? They are not like entities that come from outside. The shadows that we have inside are self-created, and they can take over, they can possess you. You can be possessed by anger. You can be possessed by rage. Right? And that is something, it's a shadow, it's a form of evil. There's another frame, which is the one I have been using. It's the frame that is given in the Sikh religion. In the Sikh religion, they speak about 5 evils, which correspond to 5 aspects, shadow aspects of our psyche. And you probably have heard, the most universal is called lust, L-U-S-T. Lust is that appetite for sexuality, and it's completely chaotic in a way that it does not serve procreation, love, and the beauty of that deeper intimate connection. Lust is something really chaotic, really unorganized, and is so powerful. It's also is one of the universal shadows that we need to deal with. Besides lust, there was anger. I mentioned just now that is universal, right? Anger is one of the really critical internal forces of our psyche that when it takes over, it destroys. When you're angry and the anger possesses you, you can destroy your relationship, you can destroy your work, you can destroy your actual dreams. There was a third shadow or evil, they call them evils. And the third one was greed. Greed is that shadow that makes us basically want more and more and more and more. And it is very often rooted in the feeling or misconception that we are incomplete, that we are insufficient. And so there's something inside of us that starts to have a tremendous ambition for material things, for anything. And that is what we call the shadow of greed. Another aspect, attachment. Yeah, so the attachment is another aspect, very powerful and very critical aspect, because when attachment takes over, you lose your freedom. When you are possessed by that attachment. You lose the capacity to choose with the freedom to know what is best and what you really want. Attachment is something that is rooted in security, the need for security. It's also something that, like all the shadows, come from early times of our lives. When we are very young, we need to attach ourselves emotionally to someone. We need to attach to our parents, to mother, father, whoever is there. That gives us security, because the human beings are so vulnerable. We're the only animals that when we are born, we need absolute care from an adult. The rest of the animals of this planet, they pretty much after they are born, they stand up in their 4 feet and then they start following the mother. We don't have that. We develop attachment because we need to survive the circumstances. So in some cases, when the little baby or little boy or girl did not have the moment to attach in a secure way, in a secure manner to a mother or father, then it starts to develop a tremendous inclination to attach later on in life. Attachment to people, relationships, money, material things, and then it takes over. You become a person that defines herself based on the possessions that you have. You are not yourself, you are what you possess. And that's an evil. That really limits and identifies your being with something that is going to be transitory. Anything that you can attach to that is from the outside world is just passing, it's just transitory. And when you put so much energy into attaching yourself, you will suffer, because anything that you can attach to sooner or later will go. From any person, from any people in this planet to anything material, everything comes and goes. And this shadow of attachment, they call it mohi in Gurmukhi, is so difficult to handle. Well, but the most problematic, I would say, and universal, is arrogance. This is being pointed in all different spiritual paths as the fundamental obstacle for enlightenment, for happiness, for health, for joy. When arrogance, that hidden part of our psyche, takes over, we disconnect to the rest of people. We consider, evaluate others in a light in which we see them as lower, and we consider ourselves higher. And this creates a disassociation between ourselves and our spirit. We begin to identify ourselves with a false sense of superiority. And Jesus was one of them that is very famous, that when he is in the desert meditating 40 days, doing a fasting, eating nothing, when he is tested by Satan, is said in the Bible, no? It's a very critical moment that in which he could have lost his life. Satan said, if you are so great, if you are who you said you are, you can just jump here and the angels will carry you because you are the Son of God. Yeah, that's what the voice of the shadow was saying. It's not Satan necessarily as an entity. It's an aspect of our mind. It's an aspect of our psyche that it's there. And we all have them. So when you have arrogance, you lose the perspective of your true power, and you lose the innocence of your true self. Dive and have a deeper look, a deeper experience of our true forces, hidden forces, and to start coming to terms with them. We don't have to suppress, or we cannot actually get rid, but we can embrace, we can heal, we can align those forces, and we can use them. One person that knows her anger, for example, and it's connected to the anger in a healthy way, can actually use that anger when it's appropriate. You have to understand that the shadows have a place in our lives for us to become more real, for us to become more human in a complete sense, more whole. We're not supposed to just be angels, loving, and look and project as if we were so full of light and radiance and nothing else but that. Well, if you don't know your shadow, if you don't know your strength, if you don't know the anger, if you don't know the lust, these forces will actually play games with you. But if you rather know them and you are aware of how they function, you will be very powerful. When in the different spiritual traditions, the masters actually go through this and they successfully cross these different tests coming from the inner self and the shadows of the inner self, they are known as actually sovereign of their own lives. They are self-empowered beings that rule over the dark side of their own life. But in order to get to that completeness of character, you must know what is hidden. You must know the true forces that truly move you more than what you think you know about yourself. So first thing is to assume that we don't know ourselves as much as we think, that we don't know the depth and extension of our inner life as much as we think we know. And that humility is the beginning of the journey. If you would come to explore yourself, you will discover yourself. That's the formula. You don't discover yourself if you don't explore yourself. And exploring yourself doesn't mean only the beautiful things. It means all of who you are, with all your fragmented parts. So if you wish to explore yourself more with a guidance and with a systematization of the process, I think it's such an important theme. It's something that personally I feel is so relevant, and is even more relevant than many of the meditations and process for prosperity and enlightenment and so on, because this is the lower level of our true intention. And when we dive there, we can correct the root of our true intention. We can meet the true intention as it is in its raw form, and we can align it. We can relate to it. We can heal it. Yeah, this process is not a process of repression. This is a process of self-healing. This course I developed is consisting of a lecture of about 30-20 minutes that targets directly these 5 evils, and then there is a practice. Look, success is something we all want. Happiness, love, joy is something we all want. But not everyone is willing to pay the cost of what it means to reach that human experience. And the cost is to have depth. Without depth and vastness, our success, our joy, our love is rather superficial, and it won't last, and it won't be felt independent of the circumstances. When you do the deeper work, which is the one that I've been opening up today, this work can create the foundations for a life that has strong pillars. Nam.